Alright, I'm gonna start by saying this. I think that overall, Genshin Impact is a good, worthwhile experience. It is one of the most unique and interesting real-time combat systems that I've ever played in a JRPG, despite the lack of context for being able to literally become a different person at will. That's a bit weird. While the individual combat of characters isn't very great, I absolutely love the amount of synergy there is between all of the characters in the game. I just wish balance was a bit better. There are still some characters that are completely useless as well, after all, despite having interesting abilities. But despite that, it's still a great game. The open world exploration is also very enjoyable. Some of the areas in this game are absolutely beautiful, and the differing styles of each region makes each feel unique and fun to explore. The puzzles in each region can be surprisingly interesting too. Yes, there are quite a few filler puzzles, a lot of copy and paste, especially Inazuma. Every nook and cranny of Inazuma is filled with them for some reason, but the ones that are good are actually pretty damn good, especially the world quests. The story has its moments. There are some really well animated cutscenes and some hype as hell moments.
No. In this human age, the people of Liyue must find a way to overcome this crisis on our strength alone.
Look, the story isn't very good. Okay? The writing in this game is overall pretty bad. The characters are mostly one-dimensional with very lazily written character quests. But that's not really why I played the game. I don't really care for the waifus or the narrative. I just really liked the gameplay and exploration. It was really fun in Genshin Impact. Enough to almost completely make up for the pretty god-awful writing. Now, after that, you might be a bit confused by the title of the video. If you, for some reason, can't read, I let out a dirty little secret of mine recently. I skipped a whole day of logging into Genshin for dailies and events, and it felt good. You don't understand the relief I felt after just one day of skipping dailies. That one day, that one day has given me the power I needed to quit this damn game for good. To stop forfeiting upwards of 2 hours of my day every single day to a game where most of the events and updates are pretty fucking awful. Shit. I had my fun with the game, but now it's gotten to the point where I find myself finding less enjoyment and more frustration. I will, as I usually do, go over the past couple events, probably for the last time. I will also explain a little more as to why I'm glad I've finally broken away from this monster of a game. Hopefully by the end you will understand, and maybe, if you're a Genshin player, you will think to yourself, maybe it's not worth it. Disclaimer. Most of this video was produced before the 2.4 update, and I sure as hell am not going back to play the events that released with it, because if the past updates are anything to go by, they probably aren't very good. If you didn't know, Genshin Impact is a single-player RPG with minor multiplayer elements. That will be important. Single player. I have to say this because Genshin is also, for some reason, a live service game, and my opinion of the game largely depends on which of those two genres I talk about more. As a single player RPG, it's pretty damn great for the reasons I outlined earlier. However, as a live service game, it's pretty damn terrible. It's a game filled with an extremely boring, tedious grind, and events that are poorly designed, underbaked, terribly written, and probably exist only to force players to keep logging in to get their damn Primo Gems. One such event was the recent Shadow Amidst Snowstorms event, an event which, frustratingly, had a story that ended before it ever even got started, and gameplay that felt a bit scuffed at best. My slightly more in-depth thoughts on that are in Another video. This one is going to be more about the last two events, or more specifically, the ones that finally made me quit the game for good. Well, the last two events that are actual events and not just talking to some random person for Fremo Gems once a day. Let's start with the Misty Dungeon event. This is the second time the event has been run and is mostly the same with some actually nice changes. It's an event that had players going into dungeons with pre-built versions of some characters that weren't their own, which is different from the last event where you had the same selection of characters for each dungeon. This is actually quite a neat idea. Each dungeon was set up like a puzzle that needed solving, each having a special modifier that is set to power up some kind of elemental reaction or other combat mechanic. This event has some big problems though. This event, it feels like a tutorial designed to teach players about the various elemental reactions and combat possibilities. So why exactly is it an event? For a limited time only, you too can learn how to play the game. In fact, most of the events in this game don't really feel like events. They feel like content that should just be in the game. Normal content updates for a live service game. And not events that you can only do for a limited time. Some events actually feel like the end game content that Genshin still doesn't have. Unless you count the god-awful Spiral Abyss, which I got bored and frustrated with after just a couple of months after the game released. Anyway, each dungeon is exactly the same in this event, with the exception of the pylons you need to activate being in different places. It gets very tiresome very quickly running through the exact same bland hallways and rooms over and over. The only difference being how you go about completing combat encounters. This inane repetition is actually one of the largest reasons why I stopped playing Genshin. It's an aspect that absolutely plagues the live service part of Genshin, just like the next event on my list, the Energy Amplifier event. Now, this event was another rerun of a past event, except this time, almost nothing changed. Not only that, but the good part of this event has been redone countless times in the past events. And the bad part is just doing the same easy shit over and over again. Are you starting to understand the annoying repetition of Genshin's events, its live service part? The bad part, by the way, is literally just following an icon on a map, destroying some rocks, and then killing the enemies there before doing it all again and again and again. And the good part involves setting up your energy amplifier with a bunch of different modifiers that have paragraphs that are way too fucking long. I don't like this. And using that to fight a group of enemies or boss. You also select more modifiers before you get into the fight, as well as a difficulty for each encounter. This is actually pretty cool. I actually enjoyed setting up my party and selecting modifiers that allow me to reach the score goal while also working with the strengths of my party. However, this has been done with numerous events in the past. It's not uncommon with their events. While I do quite like the combat, there is a limit to how much I can keep doing the same thing over and over. Like, the best part about the combat in Genshin is setting up a party where every party member complements the strengths of each other party member. The execution side of combat never gets all that complicated. Something else you gotta keep in mind is that this being a gacha game, new characters, aka things that will liven up the combat for you, are locked behind gacha. RNG mechanics. The thing is, I would still be very positive on the combat if I didn't have all of these events and dailies heavily persuading me to constantly engage with it. But here's the thing. You can just not. I've been playing a lot of Guild Wars 2 lately, and in my addiction, I forgot to do Genshin dailies and events for one day, as I stated earlier. I still haven't logged in after that one day. The day after, while playing Guild Wars, I remembered that Genshin, the Genshin that I forgot the day before, and I thought, well, why? Why even do them? What do I get out of it besides some currency to get some poorly written waifus and husbandos that I don't even care about? Characters that are gonna make me go through the awful repetitious grind that is artifact farming. All for an end game that basically doesn't exist. You know, Genshin actually reminds me a lot of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Ubisoft, a game with a ton of bloat, Ubisoft, and shitty events that make me force me to log into your goddamn game, Ubisoft. Except, unlike Genshin, Assassin's Creed had no incentive to do those things. I don't even know why it was in that game. Genshin has waifus. Why do these things in a single-player RPG, Ubisoft? MiHoYo? Ubisoft? The only time I find myself enjoying Genshin is after big, meaningful content updates like the 2.0 Inazuma update, because that is the content that is generally the most well-made and enjoyable, as long as you disregard the terrible main story, that is. The amount of boring, repetitive content that this game asks of its players just for some damn waifus is absurd. But here's the thing. The good part of Genshin isn't the live service aspect. Normal games do get updates. Yes, you could technically call it a live service, but you're still adding on to the main single-player JRPG portion that you only have to do once. And the big updates for this game are essentially the size of paid expansions for normal video games for free. So why? Why go through this game's live service aspect? The incredibly repetitious nature of it is just not fun. And I know repetition and repetitious is a word that I've been saying a lot in this video, but I'm not saying that repetition is bad in video games. Most games have it in some form, but that repetitious content has to be made consistently enjoyable, either through just really good game design or the option to choose what you grind. Ideally both. The second part is an area Guild Wars 2 excels at. I know I'm sucking Guild Wars 2's cock a lot here, but I just love the game. It is not an area Genshin excels at all. I cannot tell you the dread I felt when I had to grind any of the domains in this game for just a few months after release. They are almost all extremely boring, and you have to do them dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens of times if you want your characters to hit harder than wet noodles. It doesn't help that the artifact RNG in this game is still unbelievably terrible, with still no way to reroll even just one substat of an artifact. And while I'm talking about domains, why exactly do you spawn so far away from the actual domain and rewards tree? Why can't everything just be in the actual arena? You spawn in, do the thing, and the chest spawns in the arena. They've literally done it, and other stuff in events. Why are domains the one thing you do more than anything else designed like this? I'm getting sidetracked. My point is, every piece of content in this game that is designed to keep you playing every day, the events, domains, dailies, are all very poorly designed and downright unfun. But we do them anyway, for the waifus, right? Yes. Genshin is a game that I think is pretty good, but I would never recommend anyone get into it because it's brought down so much by the live services nature of it. Anything can feel worse via repetition, and Genshin is definitely no exception. And you know what? You can really, actually just ignore it if you are strong enough, and still have a really good time with the game. Which is what I'm probably gonna do. I might still log on for the really big updates like Sumeru, but other than that, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done. And it feels like a weight has lifted off my shoulders. Genshin gamers, stop. Get some help. Go play some other video games out there. There are plenty. The waifus just aren't worth it. And even if they are, there are actually some pretty good single-player RPGs that have some pretty good waifus in it, like Tales of Arise and Persona 5 Royal. Whew. Damn, that was a whole lot longer than originally planned. This video was supposed to be a few minutes just going over the past events, but then I realized I wasn't having fun, and I stopped playing Genshin. After that, everything spiraled out of control. This entire video spiraled out of control. And realistically, it's not that long by YouTube standards, but I'm also not very well-versed in writing videos, so I was originally planning an SMT5 first impressions video, but that didn't go much, didn't get anywhere after I started this one. It didn't get any too much. I didn't go into too much depth about Genshin, and some of my paragraphs here were a bit messy, and I think there's still some things I should have talked about. But whatever. Genshin. It's like it's a game. It's what happens when I get very frustrated with a game. Genshin is a game that has so much potential to be amazing, but the longer I played it, the more I realized that just wasn't happening. And I'm disappointed. I skipped a day of Genshin, and
structural integrity.
You can too. Anyway, follow me on Twitter at Land654 and Twitch at Land, aka Greg. Like if you, well, like the video, and subscribe if you don't want any more Genshin content. Probably.